the prophet Amos, chapter 1. And let's see a couple names here. Amos, who was among the herdsmen of Tekoa, which is the sounding of the shofar, pretty much, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah. My strength is Yah, king of Yehudah, and in the days of Jeroboam, of whom we are reading, by the way. Sorry. The son of Joash. So Jeroboam, the people will contend. Let me go one by one. So we have Amos, which is the name of the prophet that we are reading, and means burden, the burden. So he was called burden, which kind of, no, it was a prophecy, but not necessarily. Actually, his father also had prophecy, but my point is that his name was prophetical in the sense that he would receive a burden for his people, and that being the word that he will receive from the Father to tell his people. So that is his burden, what we will read in this book. And that's why his name is Amos. From Amos, he carried, basically, the verb in the past. So then we have Tekoa, which is a stockade. Let me see. The pitch a 10, but let me see here. There you go. Tekoa, the blast of a trumpet, an instrument like the shofar. Then we have Uzziah, my strength is Yahweh. Jeroboam, the people will contend. Joash, given by him, and actually it should be given by him. The Yud representing him. Oh, in this case, they write it like that because you see here, Yahushua was his original name, Yahushua. So given by Yahweh, but it could be also translated as the fire of Yahweh. You see, Esh, that's fire, the fire of Yahweh. And Yahushua came as the water of life. The last comes as the fire. The words of the burden, who was among the herdsmen of Tekoa, the blasting of the shofar, which he saw concerning Israel, he who will reign as the mighty one, he who contends with the mighty one. In the days of Uzziah, my strength is Yahweh, sovereign of the praise of Yahweh. And in the days of Jeroboam, the people will contend, son of Joash, and son of Joash, sovereign of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. So Joash, given by Yahweh, but like I said, you can actually see in the name the fire of Yahweh. And I think it does connect with everything that we'll see here. If we just take the names one by one, and yeah, there's a lot of names here now that I see. So I'll just take this one from the first verse because it is the introduction to the message. And then I'll read the chapter, and then next week we'll see real quick the names, since Omar took the time to get them for me, which I appreciate, brother. And let's go. The words of Amos. So I'll just read the names. The burden will be the blowing of the shofar. Remember that the last comes as the shofar. He comes as the iron horn of Jerusalem, as the prophet Micah said. But also Shaul, he said that the last would be the malach of Yahweh, who would come down with a trumpet blast, the last trumpet. The voice of the malach, the voice of the trumpet. So the malach is a trumpet who comes with a burden to fulfill the will of Yahweh. So the burden is the blowing of the shofar. during the seventh trumpet for the harvest. He who will rule as the mighty one. Okay, so the burden to blow the shofar is for he who contends with the people and with the mighty one of this world, he who will rule as the mighty one, whose strength is Yahweh, who praises Yahweh, with whom the people will contend, because the people will hate him, as we see in Revelation 11. For he is the fire of Yahweh. The people will contend because Yahweh gave them. The fire of Yahweh who will rule as the mighty one. So we see that through the meanings of the names, there's a message regarding the coming of the last, bringing fire, bringing judgment. Like I always say, the prophets normally prophesy about Mashiach the first, but they themselves represent the last. And since Mashiach, what one fulfills literally, the other one spiritually, and vice versa. So in what is literal, you mainly see the first, and what is spiritual, you see the last, meaning through mystery. So in this case, the names reveal something historical about people who were named that way. But through the meanings of the names, we receive a prophecy about something hidden, and therefore, most of the times, that mystery refers to the end times. So, the words of Amos, who was among the herdsmen of Tekoa, which he saw concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah, sovereign of Yehudah, and in the days of Jeroboam, son of Joash, sovereign of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. Confirms it even more, because remember that in Revelation 11, when the two witnesses resurrect, after the 3.5 days, a spirit of life from Elohim entered into them, and they stood up on their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them. And they heard a loud voice from the heaven saying to them, come up here. And they went up into the heaven in a cloud, and their enemies saw them. And in that hour there came to be a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. And in the earthquake 7,000 men were killed, and the rest became afraid and gave steam to the Elohim of the heavens. Right? So there will be an earthquake when the two witnesses resurrect. Just like in a mirror, there was an earthquake when Yahushua died. Yahushua died when the two witnesses begin. The two witnesses died when Yahushua began his ministry. And there is a lot of parallels between that, but like in a mirror, I repeat, what one fulfills literally, the other one spiritually. So we see an earthquake here right after the resurrection of the two witnesses. And we see how he's saying sovereign of Israel 2 years before the earthquake. There was an earthquake in the time of this king. That is the word earthquake that they are referring to. But the fact that it appears here obviously connects with other earthquakes. And in this case, because of what we just read from the names and all of that, with the earthquake that will happen after the resurrection of the two witnesses, which would be 2,000 years after Mashiach. And let me see something else. And since the two witnesses preached for 3.5 years, if this earthquake is connected in every way to that earthquake after the resurrection, by the way, in the book of Revelation, we see 3 earthquakes, great earthquakes. There are others, but through Revelation, the book of Revelation, there are 3 earthquakes. One was, each gets worse every time. The last obviously will bring everything down. And they are connected each to the seals, the trumpets, and the bowls of wrath. The earthquake in the middle is the one that has to do with the trumpets. just like tekoah, the blowing of the shofar. That's why I'm connecting it with the death of the resurrection of the two witnesses that we just saw in Revelation 11. But there are two other great earthquakes. Just want to make that clear. But since we have the blowing of the shofar here, I would mainly connect it with the great earthquake during the trumpets. Namely, this one in Revelation 11 that is right before the seventh trumpet, just a few days before that. Actually, like 9 days. So if this has to do with that earthquake, and the two witnesses preached for 3.5 years, then this that we are about to read would connect mainly with what would be going on during the first 1.5 years of their ministry, or by the end of that first 1.5 years. And then he says, and he said, Yahweh roars from Zion, right? Sion, the true pronunciation. And he said, Yahweh roars from Sion and gives forth his voice from Jerusalem. And the pastures of the shepherds shall mourn, and the top of Carmel shall wither. Carmel, and yeah, I think I'm going to have to be seeing the names. So, as I have mentioned many times, because remember, Carmel is the place where the sacrifice that Eliyahu brought fire from heaven took place. And remember that the two witnesses will be killed in a similar manner, trying to copy that. So that also connects, right? The burden of he who blows the shofar, who will rule like the mighty one, whose strength is Yahweh, the praise of Yahweh, with whom the people will contend, the fire of Yahweh, who will rule as the mighty one. Right? So all of that connects with the earthquake with the resurrection 2 years before that is roaring. Now, Carmel, like I said, is the place where that sacrifice took place that the false prophet will copy to kill the two witnesses. So you see how it all still following the same line about the end times. Carmel means a garden, like a paradise. Now, also, it's important here, Yahweh roars from Sion, right? So Sion is his kingdom. Obviously, it is a mountain in Jerusalem, but we can also see it as his kingdom in the heavens, roaring from the heavens. Just like once the last gets to Jerusalem, where he's going to be killed, as in Mount Carmel, where the sacrifice happened, and after there will be an earthquake. When he goes to Jerusalem, he will be saying the same things he would be saying around the world about the doctrine, about the truth, about Yahweh and his son Yahushua. So therefore, he will be roaring from Sion. But more than that, if we go to Revelation 6, and for this, not to read a lot, I'll just explain most. Revelation 6 talks about the seals. The first 4 are 4 riders on 4 horses. In Christianity, they claim that the first seal is the Antichrist. That makes no sense for way too many reasons. I'm not going to get into them because there are way too many, but I have explained them and they are recorded in some of the studies here in this channel. The first seal is positive. The next 3 are negative. For many reasons, the symbols used, the words used, the color used, and the fact that the last 3 are in a way a contrast to the first. Both, they are all negative in contrast to the first, which is positive. But there are other contrasts that are done, or parallels that we find between the next 3. I'm not going to get into them because I just want to show something. There are 4 creatures that surround the throne, the cherubim. the four creatures that have four different shapes: the face of a human, the face of an eagle, of a lion, and of an ox. So four creatures: ox, lion, eagle, man. When these four creatures surround the throne, they say Kadosh, they cover the presence of Yahweh, for he is set apart. And these four creatures are connected to each of the four seals of Revelation 6. In the previous chapters, Yahuhanan gives the order of those creatures and mentions the lion first. He mentions the lion first. Then the ox, afterwards the man, and then the eagle. So the lion is the first. So the lion is connected to the first seal. Just like the lion of Yehudah, and Yehudah is the first, the tribe that is connected to the first month of the year, which is that of Aries, which is when Mashiach died as the lamb. So he came as the lamb. Now he must manifest as the lion. 2,000 years ago, the Jewish people were expecting a lion, but they received a lamb, so they sacrificed it. Nowadays, Christians are expecting a lamb, but a lion will manifest, and they will be surprised, and they will think it is too wild, and they will think it is evil because Satan is going around like a roaring lion looking for whom he may devour. So when they see the lion, they won't understand that it is the lion of Yehudah and not Satan. Now, the lion is connected to the first seal, just like the lamb is sitting with the book, the scroll that has 7 seals. When he opens the first seal, the lion roars, as we see here. And I saw when the lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one, that will be the first one, of the 4 living creatures, that will be the lion, saying, like a sound of thunder, come and see. Like a sound of thunder. This is not mentioned in any other of the seals. And that is important, because in scriptures, the voice of Yahweh would be represented by the thunder. As when Mashiach heard thunder and he actually understood what Yahweh was telling him. But other people said, no, that's just thunder. Others said, an angel has spoken. So the lion roared, and it sounded like thunder, because it was the voice of Yahweh manifesting as the lion of Yehudah during the first seal, by the order of the lamb as he opened the seal. Not only that, remember that sound in Hebrew is the same word as voice, which is call, like call of thunder, like the voice of thunder, which is the voice of Yahweh coming as the lion of Yehudah. And I looked and saw a white horse. White is purity, is set apart, is good. Horse is war. So he comes to do war, but spiritual war. And that fits what we just read in Ephesians, right? Ephesians 6. So the last comes for a spiritual war, and he will defeat the enemy with the word of his mouth, with the Ruach. And he who sat on it, holding a bow, for he will give the teaching from far away, just like Mashiach gave it from close, like the sword. Yahushua, the word, is the sword. The last is the bow in this case. And a crown was given to him, for Mashiach came as a priest, the last comes as a king. And he went out overcoming and to overcome, so he will win. If that was the enemy, we would have issues. And there will be no reason to continue or to be here studying. So then it goes to the second seal. All of that just to go back to Amos. And he said, Yahweh roars from Sion, like in the first seal, the lion announces it, and gives forth his voice, like the voice of thunder, because Yahushua is the word, and the last is the voice. I know I always say that, but it's just to get it. There are some who will hear it for the first time. I understand that. Some of you have heard it 1,000 times. Sorry, but it is so that it is clear. And when you guys are reading the scriptures by yourselves and all that, you can understand what hand is, what arm is, because people will normally confuse the two, right? People will normally think that an arm is just the hand because they are connected, or when Yahweh says hand, it doesn't mean anything other than when he says arm, right? We need to understand that every term, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for every word that Yahweh uses throughout scriptures, and we need to understand that to be able to separate and then connect. And through separation and then connection, we will understand how everything is one, right? So, and he said, Yahweh rose from Zion and he gives forth his voice from Jerusalem. So just like we just read in the book of Revelation, the creature will roar from the kingdom of Yahweh in the heavens when the Lamb opens the seal and gives forth his voice from Jerusalem. And then his voice will manifest from Jerusalem. In the same, remember that Jerusalem means he who instructs, shalom. Instruction comes from the verb yara. It is to throw. It is also to instruct. Torah is the instruction that comes from the verb yara. And yara, since it is to throw, he threw, it connects with the one who throws arrows. That's why to hit the mark is to fulfill the commandment, because Hebrew is an objective language. So it is all understood through things that we can see and touch and do. So to fulfill a commandment is represented by the word that connects with hitting the mark, throwing an arrow to the target. So Jerusalem, the Yeru comes from Yara, also from Yireh, just in case I have mentioned that, but there's a connection, as you can see in Hebrew, Yireh, Yara. In the case of Yara, he threw, for he comes to throw shalom. And that is what Jerusalem means. And in the pastors of the shepherds shall mourn, and the pastors of the shepherds shall mourn. It's interesting, because the voice of Yahweh is coming, and the pastors of the shepherds shall mourn. Shouldn't they be happy? If the good shepherd is coming, shouldn't the pastors or shepherds be happy? Yet they have not been doing what Yahweh said, and that's why they will mourn. The pastors will hate the last, and they will be the ones influencing leaders to kill them. Just like the Pharisees, when they influenced Rome to kill Mashiach. And the pastors of the shepherds shall mourn, and the top of Carmel shall wither. The garden, the beautiful garden, shall wither. So there will be hunger for the sheep, pretty much what he's saying here. So when the last appears, would be a time of hunger. Interestingly enough, the third seal is world hunger. It will be physical and spiritual. The spiritual one is prophesied by this prophet, Amos, as we will see eventually in the book. But we see that in the second verse is already mentioning that there will be hunger, famine during the manifestation of the last. And that will be part of the punishment for rejecting the truth that came through Mashiach and that now will come through the last. So, and the pastures of the shepherds shall mourn, and the top of Carmel shall wither. This will be a time like the time of the 7 bad cows, skinny ones, that Pharaoh saw, and then Yosef explained, right? Yahusef, who is the ancestor of the last. That's why he fulfilled that parallel, because the whole earth was hungry. And that was when he came to power and fed the whole world. So the last will come to start the ministry once the world is in hunger, and he will feed the whole world with spiritual food through the true teaching. But those who reject it will remain hungry and therefore eventually die. And the pastures of the shepherds shall mourn, and the top of Carmel shall wither. Thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgression of Damashek, and for 4, I do not turn it back, because they threshed Gilad with threshing implements of iron. And when it comes to the names, Damashek, it is translated as Salin is the sackcloth weaver. As I have mentioned, the 2 witnesses are dressed in sackcloth, so they are connected once again to the word Damashek. They come in silence, not in the sense that they won't speak. They will reveal the true doctrine, but they won't reveal who they are. Just like a thief in the night. For Mashiach said, the coming of the Son of Man will be like a thief in the night. The last is like a thief in the sense that he enters this world and nobody will see him until he is gone. I mean, nobody will realize or recognize him until it's too late. So, thus said Yahweh, also Damashek can be translated, if we separate the word in 2, can be translated as the word of the air. I mean, the blood of the air. So Yahushua is the air, and he gave the blood so that we may also inherit the kingdom, be in his body. So thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Damashek, and for 4. Yahweh tends to do that. Says 3 as the limit, and the 4th is pretty much when it's already too much. That's why the curses go all the way to the 4th generation, and then Yahweh cuts them. For 3 transgressions of Damashek, and for 4, I do not turn it back. So he's pretty much saying 3 was enough, but when they did the 4, there's no way I will turn it back. So when there's 3, they still can repent, but when the 4th comes, it's over. There's no repenting, and they won't even want to repent because they reach the level of no turning back. Because they threshed Gilad with threshing implements of iron. Gilad means a rocky region. Remember that represents, remember that the Yahushua said that Yahweh can take children from Abraham from the rocks. So the rocky region represents a region that has a lot of children of Abraham. And they were threshed with implements of iron because Rome took control and destroyed our people. Rome represented by the iron, Gilad, a place of rocks. The chosen few are like rocks that will be used to build the temple. Our ancestors were threshed, and the many will be in the threshing floor or in the winepress of the wrath, as we see in Revelation 14. But I shall send fire upon the house of Hazael, and he shall consume the palaces of Ben-Hadad. Hazael means one who sees the mighty one. Haza is he saw, El is the mighty one. So Hazael, he who sees the mighty one. Ben-Hadad means the son of a false mighty one, right? So I say false mighty one in the sense that obviously Hadad is not Yahweh, but the word is normally translated Hadad as mighty one. The false god Hadad, right? But Hadad is translated as mighty. right? So we know Hadad as a name of an entity is a false mighty one, but the word comes from Adad, which means, well, in this case, not that connected, but I shall move softly, I shall love, right? The other one was mighty. Here we have it again, mighty, Hadad, in this case with a chet. And it comes from Hadad, to be sharp, to be alert. Anyways, the point is the son of the one who is mighty, or son of the mighty one. But I shall send fire. So we see Yahushua came as the water, the last comes as the fire. Amos mentions the fire because it is talking about the end times. And that's why the Carmel wither, the pastors mourn. But I shall send fire upon the house of Hazael. So Yahweh is sending a fire upon the house of those who claim to know him, those who claim to believe in him, but do not act according to what he says. Why I say that? Because Hazael means he who sees the mighty one, or he who saw the mighty one. And he shall consume the palaces of the son of the mighty one. He shall consume the palaces, the churches, where they preach of a false son, the false Messiah, Ben Hadad. I'm not saying that Ben Hadad is the name of the false Messiah. I'm saying Ben Hadad represents the false Messiah, because Ben is son. Hadad is a false mighty one. So the son of the false mighty one, which they preach and worship in those places where they claim they are worshiping the son of the mighty one, which is the meaning there. So, but I shall send fire upon the house of Hazael, and it shall consume the palaces of Ben Hadad. So it is obviously that in the churches where they preach about a son of a false mighty one, they claim to see the mighty one. And many of them actually have images of that false Messiah. And now that I think about it as well, remember the name Jesus? Pronounced that way, Jesus would have as a root Chaza. That's why Jesus, some translated as the vision of Zeus, or he who sees Zeus. That's why Chaza is the verb in Hebrew. Chezu, very similar. You add the S at the end, and we have Jesus, which would be he who sees Zeus. And that is the one they worship in those places or palaces. But I shall send fire upon the house of Hazael. So the fire of Yahweh would enter the house, the kingdom, the churches of those who claim to believe in the mighty one and who claim to see him, those who have idols. And he shall consume the palaces, I repeat, like the churches of those who believe in a false Messiah, in the son of a false mighty one, Ben Hadad. And I shall break the bar of Damascus and cut off the inhabitant from the valley of Awen, and the one who holds the scepter from Beit Eden, and the people of Aram shall go exiled to Kir, said Yahweh. Here we have several names. And second. So, and I shall break the bar of Damascus. I already mentioned how that connects with the two witnesses because of the sackcloth and with the blood of Mashiach. So he said that right after mentioning what I explained regarding Hazael and Ben Hadad, the false doctrines and churches where they worship a false Messiah. And that is why this comes next. And I shall break the bar of the blood heir. as in those who think they will get resurrection through his blood, but are worshiping a different one. And I shall break the bar of Damashek, the inhabitant from the valley of Awen, which means vanity, right? Normally appears as Aven, vanity. Ben Eden, right? As we know, Ben, but this says Beit Eden, which would be the house of luxury, of delight. Remember, Eden or Eden is the garden, the paradise, the house of the paradise, the house of the garden of Eden. And then Adam, which is exalted, and Kir, which means wall. So, and I shall break the bar of Damashek, the blood heir, and cut off the inhabitant from the valley of vanity. Isn't it interesting that in those false doctrines and churches, they really praise vanity, which is what made Lucifer fall. And they don't do it openly, it's just something within. And that's why they try to be like the world. They try to compete with other churches. They want more people, not important if they do what they're supposed to, not important if they know what they're supposed to. Just go and give offerings and tithe and all of that. And they want to have the best car, the best house, look all fancy. That is vanity. They want their church to be huge, and not thinking about the souls, not thinking about the message, only about vanity. They want to be bigger than. So, and I shall break the bar of Damashek, as in breaking the covenant with them, breaking the connection with them, and cut off the inhabitant from the valley of vanity. Those who live in vanity will be cut off, just like vanity itself is an illusion that disappears with time. But we are eternal, not them though. And the one who holds the scepter from Beit Eden, how interesting, because he will cut off not only the inhabitant of the valley of vanity, and remember that that was the fall of Lucifer. He was so beautiful that he became vain, and wickedness entered him, and he said, I want to be like the Most High, and that's when he fell. So, and the one who holds the scepter from Beit Eden. So it is one with authority, for he holds a scepter. So in the sense of humans, it would be, and the one I was mentioning, interpretation, those who are leaders in those false doctrines, false religions, they have the scepter, for they are the ones who lead the others to the fire. And the one who holds the scepter from Beit Eden, the house of the paradise, the house of pleasure, because their churches have become that. They go there to feel pleasure, not to please Yahweh, but to please themselves through what they hear. Their teachers just tell them what they want to hear. They just want to go and dance a little, sing a little, stuff like that, things of this world in one way or another, because I repeat, they tend to compete, to copy the world. So that church becomes a house of pleasure, Beit Eden. And he who holds the scepter in the physical sense would be the leader of it, the pastor, but in the spiritual would be Lucifer. Remember that. And for that, let me go to Ezekiel 28. And it says, you were in Eden, the garden of Elohim. Every precious stone was your covering. So it is talking about Satan. It's talking to Yehezkel, whom he calls son of man, for he represents the last. who will bring down the rock that wants to replace Yahushua as the cornerstone. So he tells Lucifer, you were in Eden, the garden of Elohim. Then he says, you were perfect in your ways from the day you were created until unrighteousness was found in you. So we see here, and the one who holds the scepter from Beit Eden, from the house of Eden. And the people that are exalted shall go exiled to Kir, said Yahweh. And the people of Aram, all of this obviously happened in the literal sense back in the day, but now the point is to understand the prophetical through the meanings of the names. And the one who holds the scepter from Beit Eden, and the people of Aram, which would be those who are exalted in the world, shall go exiled. So they will be taken away from their place. Wherever they are and they think they own will be given to others. And they shall go exiled to look for protection. That's why they exiled to Kir, which is a wall, a protection. Pretty much makes reference to a walled city. Thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Azah, Azah as in the beginning of Azazel, for 3 transgressions of Azah. That's why it is translated the strong. And for 4, I do not turn it back, because they took into exile an entire exile. To surrender it to Edom. So interesting how, in a way, we could see it seems to be condemning Lucifer here, and now Azazel here. This would be Samael, which is very interesting, because there already we have 3 Satans, right, that I always mention, and it connects with what we just read in Ephesians, because we read about 4th divisions of wickedness, right? So that's why it says for 3 transgressions and for the 4th, right? So for 3 transgressions of Damashek, silent sackcloth weaver, Samael makes people afflicted, and he himself fell from the very beginning. So he was afflicted at the beginning of time. And for 4, I do not turn it back, because they thresh Gilad and threshing implements of iron. Samael is the Malach of Rome, so connected to iron. And also Gilad would connect to the idols they make with rocks. Then, but I shall send forth upon the house of Hazael, the one who sees the mighty one. Interestingly enough, Samael was given the name blind mighty one, because he wasn't able to see the mighty one. And he thought he himself was the mighty one, and that's why he fell. And he shall consume the palaces of Ben-Hadad. So now he speaks about a son of that false mighty one. And after speaking of a son, it goes on to condemn Lucifer, represented by the vanity, him being the heir in the beginning, the heir of Samael, and who held the scepter of the Garden of Eden, for he held authority. And he was exalted. And he was supposed to protect like a wall. But as we see in Ezekiel 28, ended up destroying the people. So now we go to Azazel. Thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Azah, of the strong one, and for 4, I did not turn it back, because they took into exile an entire exile. Just like they came from heaven, they were exiled from heaven. They themselves did it, but then they brought exile to humans. And then they themselves had to be exiled from the world and put into prisons, but they will be allowed to come back, because they took into exile an entire exile to surrender it to Edom. But I shall send fire upon the wall of Azah, and it shall consume its palaces. Pretty much the same that it said here. And like I said, this was connecting it to Lucifer, the first, and then the first of the, well, after Samael, of the 7 children that Samael had, one of them, Lucifer, received the light. So he was the first angel to recognize the light and accept it, and therefore he received power. And then we have Azazel, who came afterwards. For thus said, for 3 transgressions of Asa, and for 4 I did not turn it back, because they took into exile and entire exile to surrender it to Edom. But I shall send fire upon the wall of Azah, what protects it. What protects Azah, therefore he will destroy the one who claims to be mighty one, or the one who was mighty, and it shall consume its palaces. And I shall cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod. This name Ashdod is interesting. Verse 8, as you can see here, May Ashdod, from Ashdod. As you can see, is Esh plus Dot, and this Dot is beloved, and it could be pronounced David. So the fire of David, the king, the fire of the beloved one. And it says it right after, I shall send fire upon the wall of Azah, and it shall consume its palaces, and I shall cut off the inhabitant from the fire of the beloved. I will cut off the inhabitant from the understanding that the beloved one brings. I will disconnect them from the true doctrine, from the truth, for they don't deserve to be saved, as it is written in Isaiah, that is why Yahushua came speaking in parables, so that herein they wouldn't understand, and then they wouldn't repent, because they didn't deserve to be forgiven. So Yahweh only gives understanding to those whom he sees fit for his kingdom, for his call. When it comes to Ashdod, they translate it as powerful. But like I said, when you separate it, you can see the fire of the beloved one, which is powerful. And I shall cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod, from the powerful one, and the one who holds the scepter from Ashkelon. Ashkelon means the fire of infamy. You see Esh again. In this case, they do translate it with fire in it, the fire of infamy. And the one who holds the scepter from Ashkelon. From the fire of infamy. Just like the fire of the beloved one will come to the world as the last, and he will be hated by the whole world, and therefore become infamous by the standards of this society. So the fire of the beloved one will be a fire of infamy. Now, if we just see that infamy as truly negative, then it would be making a contrast of the 2 fires, the fire of the beloved one coming from Yahweh, and the fire of the enemy, who is infamous. And I shall cut off the inhabitant from Ashdod, and the one who holds the scepter from Ashkelon. Once again, another entity holding power through the fire of infamy. And I shall turn my hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, said the sovereign Yahweh. The Philistines, which are immigrants in Ekron emigration, or turned up by the roots. So that's the point. He will take them and cut them from the root. And I shall turn my hand against Ekron, as when you turn your hand against a plant to turn it from the root, torn up from the root. And the remnant of the Philistines, of the immigrants, shall perish. Those who are not truly from this reality, they're just immigrants, like the Nephilim and others, or those who will not inherit the earth, for they are not meek. And I shall turn my hand against Ekron, and the remnant of the Philistines shall perish, said the sovereign Yahweh. So we see that with this, said the sovereign Yahweh, he kind of makes a separation between what he just said and what's coming next. So he mentioned 4, starting with, see, Damashek. Well, just verse 3 and 4, then 5 and 6, then set. No, it doesn't go like that. Well, you saw how I mentioned how this connects with Samael, then this with Lucifer, then this with Azazel. That's 3. And then we have a 4th one before he makes the break, Yahweh. And once again, that 4th one connects with the 4 different separations of the wicked entities that are in the world. The last one, remember, we just saw in Ephesians, were the evil spirits that came out of the giants. And that fits the title I mentioned, well, what I mentioned here regarding the Philistines, immigrants. They are not of this world. They came from the mix of the angels and humans. And that's why they needed to be torn up from the roots. And that's what the punishment that Yahweh gave them. So just like the wickedness of the evil spirits mentioned also in Ephesians 6, 4 separations, like the 4 first separations here. And that's why also mentions remnant, because it is what's left that will perish. Everything that is that rebelled in the second heaven, started by falling with Samael. He created the demons. Then Lucifer lost his favor with Yahweh and made the 3rd of the angels also do so. Then Azazel came down with Shemchaza and taught evil wickedness to humans, and they got themselves with the women and got children which became giants, and those giants are the Nephilim, which are a mix. And the reason why their spirits had to be left on this earth, because they couldn't go to Sheol, for that is for humans, and they couldn't go to heaven, for that is for angels. And then it says, said Yahweh the sovereign. Thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions, once again it starts over, of Tzor. Remember, I just mentioned Tzor right here, Ezekiel 28, Tzor representing Lucifer. For 3 transgressions of Tzor, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they surrendered an entire exile to Edom and did not remember the brotherly covenant. And did not remember the brotherly covenant. Neither Tzor, who had dealings with Shlomo, nor Edom, who was a brother to Yaakov. They took advantage and destroyed the people, just like it also is mentioned here in Ezekiel 28 regarding Satan. 3 transgressions of Tzor, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they surrendered an entire exile to Edom and did not remember the brotherly covenant. Did not remember the brotherly covenant. Lo sakru brit achim, and did not remember the covenant of brothers. I mention it because Tzor would connect with Lucifer, who is a brother to Azazel. And just like they are evil and wicked, they are wicked and evil amongst themselves. Although at the end times, according to Daniel, they get together to try and win against Yahweh, and they get together and betray each other, and they fall because of that betrayal. Plus, they get together so that Yahweh can destroy them all once and for all. So, but I shall send fire upon the wall of Tzor, and it shall consume its palaces. I shall send fire, once again, the fire of Yahweh, upon the wall of Tzor, the protection of a rock. He who claims to be the rock, Yahushua is the rock, the cornerstone. But I shall send fire upon the wall of sword, and it shall consume its palaces. All doctrines that are given by Lucifer, all religions that came from him, will burn. Thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4 I do not turn it back. Like I said, the angel of Edom is Samael. It's interesting that the order in which I have been explaining, at least this time when it comes to the first verses, it was Samael in the same order as they came in time. Samael, Lucifer, and Azazel. And then the evil spirits that came from the giants, the Nephilim. Now it starts with Lucifer and then Samael, because Samael is the angel of Edom, as I just mentioned. And that kind of goes with the fact that after Samael fell, in time, when it comes to authority, Lucifer got the first place. Because since in time Samael fell, Yahweh gave authority over the angels to Hallel, Lucifer. So interesting that now in the second part, Lucifer or sword was mentioned first and then Edom. For 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4 I do not turn him back, because he pursued his brother with the sword. He pursued Jacob, and then he pursued the children of Jacob. And for 4 I do not turn it back. Interestingly enough, remember Jacob, when Esau, Edom, was coming to kill him, the angel of Edom appeared to Jacob and fought him, and Jacob won. And that's why he received the name Yisrael, he who contends with the mighty one. For Elohim, a mighty one, appeared to him and fought him, and that was the angel of Edom, Samael. I do not turn it back, because he pursued his brother with the sword and cast off all compassion. And his displeasure tore incessantly, and he kept his wrath forever. And his displeasure tore incessantly, and he kept his wrath forever. So, as I said, the angel of Samael, the angel of Edom is Samael, and he represents wrath itself, evil, wickedness. The evil part of wrath when it comes to the lower realities. For you, we know Yahweh, the wrath of Yahweh would manifest during the end times, but he won't feel wrath ever again, because those entities that have to do with wrath will be gone. Just like the actions, the deeds that humans act upon that actually enrage the Creator. So Yahweh will get rid of all of that so that there will be no wrath. In this case, it's talking about an angel that will be in wrath forever, because he is the in the sense of Yahweh being the light, Samael is darkness. Yahweh is Shalom, and he is forgiven, not Samael. He will be keeping his wrath forever. And his displeasure tore incessantly, and he kept his wrath forever. But I shall send but I shall send fire upon Teman, and he shall consume the palaces of Bosra. Teman and Bosra. Bosra is a flock, like a flock of sheep. Teman is south, is one of the names given to south. Remember that Yamin is right, the right. Teman is as saying to the right. Has the same root. And in Hebrew, the front is the east, the back is the west, the left is the north, the right is the south. But I shall send fire upon the south. And the south is connected to blessings. So it's pretty much saying that he will burn the blessings of those who don't deserve blessings, those who are cursed. But I shall send fire upon Teman, and it shall consume the palaces of Bosra, and it shall consume the churches where the sheep gather. Bosra is also translated as a fortress of the sheepfold. Once again, the churches that the sheepfold think protect them. will fall. But I shall send fire upon Teman, and it shall consume the palaces of Bosra. Thus said Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon. Now look at that. Ammon, like I have said in the past, represents Azazel. So now in the order that we just saw in this second part was Samael, Halel, Samael, Azazel. When it comes to Lot, Lot means covering. Lot had as children Moab and Ammon, who also represent a covering because they're children of the cover, Lot. So they are as veils. So Lot, Moab, and Ammon represent 3 veils that are placed before humans, spiritually speaking, by Samael, Lucifer, and Azazel. So Lot represents Samael in the negative sense, Moab, Lucifer, and Ammon, Azazel. I have mentioned that many times in the past, so I'll just continue. For 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4 I do not turn it back. Children of Ammon. Ammon means of his people. So the people that were supposed to worship Yahweh and follow him are following a false entity, a false Messiah. That false Messiah, the abomination of desolation, is Azazel. Like I said, the 3 entities will get together to go against Yahweh. And what they will do will be the 4th reason why they will be destroyed. As it says here, 3 transgressions, and for the 4, this will happen. So the 3, Samael will be through his body, because they will make a body of flesh, and Samael is in the flesh through the inclination to evil. We need a spirit of life. Lucifer will be the spirit of the power of the air, who will be thrown out of heaven and will enter this reality and into that body that they will create. And Azazel will come out of the abyss, as we see in Revelation 9. He will come out of the abyss to become the soul of that body. So soul, spirit, and flesh, Azazel, Lucifer, and Samael in one. And that will be the false Messiah, 666. So for 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, or the children of the people, and for 4 I do not turn it back, because they ripped open the pregnant woman in Gilad to enlarge their border, right? As the sacrifices they would do for power to enlarge their land. And just like they want to rip open the congregation to kill the last. And when I say that is because in Revelation 12, the congregation is the virgin who is about to give birth to the last, but the last is born through his resurrection, because what the first fulfills physically, the other one spiritually. Yahushua was born literally through a virgin. The last will be born spiritually through the virgin, which is the congregation. So his true birth will be the actual resurrection. His death will be the birth pains. So they, as we see in Revelation 12, the enemy will try to destroy the congregation, to kill the Son, but won't be able. Yahweh will give authority to the Son, and he will go up and take Satan out of heaven, and that's when he will manifest on this earth as if he was the Messiah. For 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon. Now it's interesting as well. Yahuhanan came, the immerser, they killed him. Yahushua came, they killed him. Now 2 witnesses come, and they will kill Eliyahu and the witness like Moshe. So for 3 transgressions of the children of the people, and for the 4, I do not turn it back. So once the people have killed the 4 that Yahweh has sent, then there will be no turning back. And that's why the door of mercy will be closed. For 3 transgressions of the children of Ammon, and for 4 I do not turn them back, because they ripped open the pregnant woman in Gilad. Gilad, the rocky region. Like I said, the rocks represent the chosen who are used to build the temple. Each of them is a stone, just like Yahushua, the cornerstone. And as we have seen in Hebrew, Banim is children. Abanim is stones. That's why he would take Banim from the Abanim. So I shall kindle a fire, once again, fire, the consuming fire. So I shall kindle a fire upon the wall of Rabbah, of the many. Rabbah could be translated as great, but it's great because there's many, as a great people, huge amount of. So as in Todah Rabbah, many thanks, right? So I shall kindle a fire upon the wall of Rabbah. Yahweh will send a fire to destroy the protection of the many, sadly. And that's why the many will die after the witness is killed. So I shall kindle a fire upon the wall of Rabbah, just like Mashiach said, I come to kindle a fire. Don't think I come to bring shalom. I came to start a fire. So now the last comes as that fire to burn the protection that the many have. So the many will fall after they kill the last, which will be the kindling of the fire for themselves. And he shall consume its palaces with a shout in the day of battle. How interesting. We just read Ephesians 6, which is all about spiritual war, the fact that we are in a war. And I explain how that refers to our time, the end times. And I explain how in the past, in the old covenant, we see a lot of war because it represents the spiritual war we would go through. That's why they fought giants and they had amazing fights, battles, and more if we read the book of Yashat and all of that, which is amazing and even hard to believe for those without faith. All of that is for us to understand the fight that we have, the battle in which we are at the moment through Mashiach. So with a shout in the day of battle, that's verse 14, Bitruah, or with Teruah, Beyom Milchama, with a shout on the day of battle, of war. But you see Teruah as in Yom Teruah. Yom Teruah, which is the day of the blasting of the shofar, the first of the 7th month, which will be the day when they will be captured. The 2 witnesses will be captured. The first of the 7th. And that is when a spiritual war will begin in a way for them, because they will be tested for 10 days, as we see in Revelation 2 as well. The 10 days from Yom Teruah to Yom Kippur, when they will be killed. With a shout, Teruah. And therefore that connects with the Tekoah. Remember Tekoah, the blowing of the shofar? And now it ends the chapter with Teruah, which is another term or synonym, right? He comes to blow the shofar, the 7th shofar, as the Malach Mikael, and he is captured in the battle in which he comes to fight on Yom Teruah, which will be an announcement for those who are chosen to understand what's coming next. With a shout, with a Teruah in the Yom of Milchama, of battle. With a storm in the day of the whirlwind. For his voice is like thunder, right? And he brings the latter rain and the Ruach, but this time with judgment and vengeance. Also with the storm in the day of the whirlwind, simply referring to the day of tribulation. And their sovereign shall go into exile, and their sovereign shall go into exile. He and his heads together, said Yahweh. Their sovereign, that of Rabbah, the one of the many, shall go into exile. That's why when the last dies and resurrects, will send Lucifer into exile, out of heaven into the world. The sovereign of the many, for he is the one who gave them the doctrine that they followed. And their sovereign shall go into exile. He and his heads together. His heads, how interesting, because remember the beast has 7 heads. And that refers to the 7 angels that have Lucifer as their authority, just like the 7 empires that rule over this world. And their sovereign shall go into exile, he and his heads together, he and his leaders together. For he will have 10 horns, and they will be also leaders of the world. They will separate the whole world. Well, they have already into 10 sections, and will give them to 10 horns, out of which comes another one who is a little horn, and that is the beast. And I mean the beast as in the world leader, because the beast is also the world government. So I hope that's clear. That's how the chapter ends. And also, remember I mentioned 4 in the beginning, then Yahweh makes a break and then mentions 3, which are kind of these 3 in a different order because of what I mentioned about the changing of authority in the second heaven after the fall of Samael. So 4 plus 3 gives us 7, right? And that is completion, earthly completion. So Yahweh is talking about the completion of his wrath against the enemy, against those who have rebelled against him. So he's bringing completion so that he can be in shalom forever and no longer get angry during eternity. Plus 7, because it will happen at the beginning of the 7th millennium, the Shabbat of Yahweh. And there was 3, Samael, Halel, Azazel. Then there was 1 that referred to the evil spirits, like I mentioned, that are around the earth. And then 3 again, who are a mirror of these 3, right? Like in the menorah. The 3 on the side, like a mirror of the other 3, but in the middle, 1 that is different than the others. Like we just saw also in the positive sense in Isaiah 11, talking about the 7 spirits that the last will have, also connecting it with the menorah.